Welcome to the Spacious Unknowing Network, Sunshine for Your Soul, with Julio
and JoJo Rose.
We invite you to enter into ecological equanimity in the unified field of spacious unknowing.
We open and awaken to broaden your access to the soul rhythm in all of us.
We engage in the pilgrimage inward to feel the infinite love that beats in the rhythm of our collective soul. We will guide you to new horizons and infinite love during our Inquire Within segment.
To accept that, you create your field.
I create my field.
And together, we create the unified field. Spacious Unknowing Network
with Julio
and JoJo Rose. Aloha and welcome to Spacious Unknowing Network, communing with your soul. I'm JoJo Rose, here with JoJo Rose. Thank you for joining us. So today is part 3 series of a 3-part series on family dynamics. What is your life showing you? Connect the dots and see. JoJo Rose, what is the way that you know and see the big picture from consciousness in your life, whether it is a seemingly small happening or a large happening?
I guess it's all the same to me, actually, but I will answer your question. Spacious Unknowing is a place of knowing. And of course, consciousness is in that. And today, I will be speaking about some family dynamics that were from a big picture. In fact, all 3 of them are from a big picture. So we were having dinner, and Jay said, "The Vietnam War is wrong. If anybody tries to put me in a war, I will say no." And Benny said, "You're not my son." Ooh, shock waves. I could feel it, and the children were very distressed, and Jay was beyond upset. And I said to Benny, you know, it was different today than it was when you served our country. And he said, "I don't want to hear it." And he stood up and he went and changed and went into the park to work. So the children, I said, how about dessert? And I looked around and they were not having it. They just wanted some calmness and some soothing sounds. So I said, okay, I'm so sorry that your dad said what he said to your brother. And I know he'll come around and it will be different. But right now, I want you to know that he has ideas and thoughts and feelings from the past. That is what made him say what he said from what you said, Jay, because he sees life differently. But this has opened up a way for him to see it today. So we're going to know he's going to do that. And you know what? Really, all of you children, this is bigger than us, bigger than this table where we're sitting. So you'll find that out. So I guess we had dessert, and Jay was very distressed. And I just held him and hugged him and said, "It's all going to work. This is bigger than us, Jay. You'll see. And your dad will probably come to you in the morning and apologize to you and all of you children." And so that was how it was left. So when Benny came in from the park, of course, the children were in bed sleeping. And he said, "I can't believe I did that with Jay." And I said, yeah, all of the children were upset. And I know that you have a past that you're relying on for those kinds of ideas? And he said, yeah, I was in the army and I got out and the Korean War conflict came up and I joined the Air Force. And so I never saw any kind of uh, conflict, combat. I was in communications. And so I know today is different. And I said, well, mainly, Benny, it's that how are we raising our children? And he pondered for a moment, and I said, we speak to them and we love them dearly. We speak to them with love and being kind to each other, kind to wherever they go and whoever they meet up with. And then we're going to send them to war to kill somebody. It doesn't compute. He said, oh, when you say it that way, yeah, that's true. And it is a different world. I will definitely apologize to Jay first in the morning and then to each one of the children because I know it upset everybody. So he did. In the morning, he hugged Jay big and really apologized in a big way to him first and then to each one of you. And he was in a carpool and the guy came about that time to pick him up, so he left. When he got in the car, the young man said to him, would you do me a favor, Benny? And Benny said, well, what is it? And he said, I am in a religion that makes me be a conscientious objector to the war. So I need a character witness to come to court for me. And I thought of you and I would appreciate it if you could do it. And Benny said, yes, I will. And so when he came home that evening, he didn't call me during the day and tell me anything about that. When he came in the evening, I gave him a big hug and kiss, as I always did. And he said, you'll never believe what happened today. I said, try me. And so we sat, well, he didn't want to tell everyone till we sat at the dinner table. He wanted to tell all of us at once. So he told us what the young man had asked him for, and that he would never have agreed to do that had this not happened last evening. And everyone was grinning, and Jay said, Mom, you said that was going to happen. And so that was, it was really lightening up, and everyone was aware of why, connecting the dots, and really happy that it did happen, because there is no way that Benny could have been present with that young man. And he was a very sincere human being. And so it all worked out really beautifully for all of us. And yeah, it was, and he let the children know that he had served in the Army, and then he signed up for Air Force because he didn't want to be drafted into the Army again when the Korean conflict happened. So, and he admitted that he needed to learn how to be here today with a war that wasn't something that people were happy about, because the government was not forthcoming about it. Of course, we learned that later through the government papers that were revealed to all of us. But there were many, many protests at the time, and people were up in arms. And Jay had a good sense of himself and what was in his eyes. Often he would say to me, Mom, they teach lies at school. I would go, oh, well, maybe you need to talk to me about all of them so I can understand with you. And he did. So that was a very eye-opening for the children way to understand that sometimes people do react in a an uncommon way. And if we really stay with consciousness, with that spacious unknowing, it allows for the knowing of the big picture, as well as what needs to be done now. I'm the one who did know your father, and I knew all about his feeling of duty. And, it was so common from World War II. We all, that's the way people lived and thought. And it was something that needed to be seen and changed. So here we are. It happened.
It did. Thank you for
Yeah.
being that clear with all of us.
Yeah.
With great love and comfort and
Mhm.
calmness and peace. Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
next one is a new school needed to be. Well, I didn't know that yet, actually. I was I was PTA secretary for a year and then a second year. And we were having a meeting and realizing that it was May or close to June, and there was no president for the following school year. And so everyone was trying to understand who could be, and nobody was volunteering. So we decided to close the meeting and come again for another meeting. By then, maybe we would have found someone. So we left, and when we met again for another meeting, and they sounded desperate and were very. I asked Benny if he'd like to be PTA president, and he said, "No, I don't think I'm qualified." And so that was that. And I went to the meeting, and people seemed very downcast and concerned that we wouldn't have a president the following school year. And I had never dreamed of doing such a thing. And I heard me say, "I'll be the president of the PTA." And I looked around to see who had said that. It couldn't have been me. Oh dear. And it was one of those soul voices that rise up, and I knew it was my calling, and I knew that I needed to accept it. So everybody seconded the motion, and I put it in the minutes of the meeting, and that was that. And so I went home, and I didn't tell anybody. I just had to be with me and absorb and assimilate what I had just done. And it did feel to me like a calling. And somehow that meant something, again, bigger than I could imagine. So I didn't tell anyone. And then after dinner, I told Benny. And he said, "Oh, good. That's wonderful. You'll be a good one." And then the children heard him say PTA president. And they said, "You're going to be the PTA president, Mom?" And you all were so excited. And I said, "Yeah, it looks that way." So we proceeded to have it was after dinner. So then 3 women had said to me at the time that they would help me in any way possible, because each of them had been president at different times of the PTA. So I went through the summer, and there was a workshop that I learned about that I wanted to go to, because they were going to be speaking about the different officers in the PTA. And so I got Gina out of her crib and was ready to walk out the door, and she started crying or screaming. I'm not sure which, but she let me know something. So I decided not to go, and she quit crying. And I had taken her back to her crib so she could take her morning nap. And I thought, well, I think I can go. She's quiet. And the minute I thought it, she started crying. So I went, wait a minute. This is not about Gina. It's about me noticing what is happening. And she's giving me an alert that obviously I'm not paying attention here. So she's going to help me out. And I knew that I wasn't to go. And I thought, okay, the women that said they'd help me are not available. And they're all busy with other things. And I went, okay, and I'm not going to that workshop. So I don't exactly know what I need to prepare myself with other than talk, the talk, of course. And so I asked, I really need some guidance for this because I've never done anything like this before. And I sat down to write. And of course, the first thing is be well prepared for the talk. And then the second thing was dress in something you really enjoy wearing, look at yourself in the mirror from head to toe, and then forget you. And then the third thing was when you're talking, look at one person in the audience and then turn and talk to another person in the audience so that you're really making it personal to the whole group. And so that's what I did. And I mean, that's what I knew I would do. And so the time came for the first meeting, and I felt comfortable and confident that I could be in it the way I needed to be. And Dr. Wheeler called me into a meeting at school. So I went at the time he had mentioned, and he was there alone. So I thought maybe my whole board would be present too, but it was just me. So he told me that the intention this year was for a new school to be built, and that he was thankful I was president, and that he would need me to go to the school board to introduce this to them with a proposal that we have a new school built. And he explained to me that the school we were in had been built in 1925. I didn't know that. And it was concrete, and there was no way that the whole idea for education at that time was to have a school without walls. And that meant that there were sliding doors between classrooms. And that would allow for more than one teacher and more than one classroom to work together and have it be much more, well, they felt that it would be inclusive in a way that was necessary and needed in education now. And so we needed to build a new school to accommodate that. And he asked me, if I would do it. And I said, of course. And he gave me the date that had been set up with Clark Maxwell, who was the chairman of the school board. And actually, two of his children went to Creel, and you all knew them.
Yes.
And so on the day, and he said, you can bring, a couple of your board members if you'd like. And so I think two, one man and one woman, came with me, and I did the talk to the whole school board, and they decided right then and there, yes. And so that was a good happening.
Yes.
And then I said, well, I have a request. May I ask you for that now? And they chuckled and said, yes. So I said, we have a principal who is an interim principal, Mrs. Eward, and we all really appreciate her and the way that she is with the children and the parents and the teachers. We'd like to see her as the installed principal for the school. And they said, well, we'll take it under consideration. and everyone will know when we decide. And I said, thank you. And off we went back to where we lived. And so what I knew to be true was in Titusville, which is where the school board met, there a high school had been built, and they moved into it, but the roof fell. It just seemed like that school had so much wrong with it that they could seem never to be able to go and stay there for any period of time because something else happened. So we didn't know about that, and I trusted that would not be the case with ours. And knowing that kind of helps you to see what you might have to create instead of that, you know,
Yes.
whatever vibe was needed. So when at the PTA meeting, Dr. Wheeler, well, first of all, PTA meetings were usually attended by parents whose children were in a program for that particular evening. And that was the case when Dr. Wheeler, the engineer, Clark Maxwell, and Principal Mrs. Ewart were present. And so it was a very small audience, but I think, yeah. Anyway, I introduced Dr. Wheeler, and he told the audience about the school and how we needed to build a new one. And the engineer explained that this particular building could not accommodate the new way of education. So the new school was necessary. And then Dr. Maxwell spoke about the same thing. I'm sorry, Chairman Maxwell. And Mrs. Ewart spoke to the parents for the classroom and the program. And so we all spoke because I introduced all of them. And it was, you know, kind of a tiny group. So I called my board together, the members, and said, you know, we need a meeting, and called them to come to my home so we could meet once a week because we had a lot of work to do. And there were 200 parents in the school. So I decided to, you know, give each, I asked them first if I would like for us to call each parent that has children at the school to get their consent for the school to be built, to have them know what was
Yes.
happening and give them some particulars so they would understand. And we divided up all the names, so each person had a certain number of people to call. Then we were meeting the following week to report back how that went, and was there anything we should know from the phone calls. And so we all did make the phone calls, and when we all showed up the following week, everyone had done what they called and asked to do. And it was pretty well where all of them loved it that we were getting a new school, and some of them didn't really care. And of course, it's always a mixed bag, but it was fine. And then we talked.
That when Dr. Wheeler spoke to you on the properties?
Well, that was, yes, the next time that he had me meet him, he told me that they had chosen three properties as possible potential places that the school would be built. And the first one he told me about that they were now trying to purchase, and said that there was a chance that any and all of them could go into litigation, which would take longer than if it just was okay with the neighborhood and,
Yeah.
you know, the districting. So he called me back in a week, and they got the property, And he said, and we will break ground in March. Um, um, and I said, okay, so I'll be there. And so when March came, well, we had the board, the members of the board, each had their own role. It had always been that way, officers, for different parts of the PTA, and the one that we all joined, but there were people who did certain parts of it, was the money, raising the money for
Yes.
PTA always provided funds for something the school really needed.
Yes.
And this year was no different. So we did all that. And when March came, I showed up for the breaking of the ground, and I started giving, complimenting Mrs. Eward for her part of it. Oh, I forgot about the
Yeah, I
fiery
was gonna
people.
bring that. I think that finished this small part,
Yeah.
and we'll go to break, and then back when we come back from break, we
Oh,
can.
okay.
How's that sound? Is that good?
Yes.
All right.
Very good. Ah.
So we're gonna go ahead and take a quick break. Stay with us because you do not want to miss what happened with the new school without walls being built. See you on the other side of the break. Aloha, if you're just tuning in, you're listening to Spacious Unknowing Network, communing with your soul. Julio, I know before the break you were sharing a life happening with a new school being built.
Mhm.
There was a part to the happening. Could you let us know what it was that
Yes.
made a big difference?
Yeah.
In what happened?
Yes, I had before the property and going for the groundbreaking, something important happened that made that all possible. There was a group of parents who were very upset about the school being built because they had heard it many times before, and that's what they said, and it never happened. So why and what would make it different this time? And so I learned that I realized they were, and I thought I need to talk to them. And I had a friend, and she said to me, "Are you going to the meeting?" I said, "What meeting?" She said, "At Mary's house tonight." I said, "What for?" And she said, "It's people that are really upset about the building of the school and on the not building on the school, new school." And I said, "Oh, well, I'm going to go. Thank you." And so I did, and I knocked on the door, and Mary came to the door and said, "Oh, hi, come in." And I could tell she was more than surprised. And so I went in and I listened to their talk, and they were very distressed and really pretty much on fire about something that wasn't very accurate. And because I knew that, and I knew why it was being built, and that things were moving in that direction for sure. So I told them what I knew, and about the people that were giving the information.
Yes.
And they weren't about to listen to me. They were being so reactive, there was no way they could listen. And I thought, okay, well, that's all right. So this was Friday night, and on Monday morning I went into Mrs. Eward's office, the principal of the school, and I said, there's a group of people who are really, really upset and don't believe the school will be built. We need to have Dr. Wheeler, the engineer, Clark Maxwell, the chairman of the school board, and of course you and I present. So also the children need to send home the paperwork to let their parents know that this meeting will take place at the school. So she said, oh, that can't be done. We can't make all those phone calls and get the children to take those home today and have it work. And I said, either you do it or I will. And she said, okay. And it got done because when the children came home to my home, they had the paperwork and it was very well done. She's very good at what she does. And that evening, Dr. Maxwell, the engineer, Dr. Wheeler, the engineer, Clark Maxwell, and Mrs. Eward were there, Principal Eward. So I introduced the first one, and Dr. Wheeler spoke to, there were 200 people in the audience. It was the most crowded I think it had ever been. So he spoke about the new school and why, the same thing he told me, the new way to educate, and the school without walls. And then the engineer explained why it couldn't happen in this school and why it was necessary to leave the school because it really wasn't a good school for the children to continue to be in. The walls were cracking. And so, and then Clark Maxwell spoke to them about the school board having given permission for the school to be built. Mm-hmm. And then Mrs. Eward added what she had to say. And then after I heard all of them and was looking at the audience, I said, do you have any questions? And not one hand raised and no one appeared to be needing to ask questions. And in that moment, I thought it was a complete failure. And then it was like, I knew that something had happened because the energy in the room as they got up to go was very different. And it was pretty alive with whatever had happened there. And I felt really good about the meeting and that all the people had shown up. That was huge.
Yeah.
And I knew they showed up because we had called them. Mm-hmm. So they felt part of it in a way that I'm not sure they would have.
Yeah.
Had we not done that. So it really bode well for the school because now there was a consensus and that makes a huge difference in the way things happen. So the next was, of course, Dr. Wheeler calling me in to tell me about the different properties. And then, of course, they did get the one they started with. And the groundbreaking was in March, which I already told about. And so I went for the groundbreaking and I was really so happy with how everything had worked so well and everyone worked together for it. And I was appreciating Principal Eward for that, and Clark Maxwell interrupted me and said, no, you did this. And I had electrified energy coming up my arms, like honoring my part in it. And I, in that moment, knew this is what I was called for. And I got it. I got what that
soul call was,
saying I would do this. And so the bids that came in to build the school, one of them was the lowest that ever had been given, and they took that one. The school started being built in May. When the children went to school in August, they went to the brand new school. And so it was pretty awesome looking. The walls just moved so easily, and the library was right in the center of the school, and that was pretty cool. So maybe you'd like to tell me about your experience with that library.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'd like to share the library and the whole school because the whole school felt open. Unlike it didn't have the typical feel of a school building.
No,
it was very open, and we all got to know each other as students because it was more of a community type learning environment.
Yeah.
We got to know more of the teachers because we didn't just have one teacher. Everyone kind of worked together and communicated, and we all collaborated, both the teachers with each other and then the students. So it was fun. But I got so excited with the library. It wasn't a big library, but it was right in the center. And unlike a typical school building, we could go to the library whenever we wanted, as long as we had the permission from the teacher. So I got to go there when I wanted to get a book or needed something for class or whatever the case may be. And the other part that excited me is that we were learning how to use a card catalog. And I think up until that point, I didn't have that in the instruction.
Huh.
And so it was brand new. And I thought, oh, I'm independent. I can come to the library all by myself, and I can find the books that I want all by myself. So it was like a graduation of some sort, for learning.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I remember how excited you were when you told me about it then. So, and the only criticism anyone had in our family was that the food was trucked in. We had in the old school a beautiful cafeteria where there were workers and they made the best food. And so now, how did they serve it, JoJo?
It was very disappointing because the older school that we had previously gone to had a big cafeteria. So we got to know the cafeteria workers, and they talked to us and they cared. Now it was each classroom lined up, and we literally went to the end of a hallway where there was a conveyor belt. And it wasn't that big, but the conveyor belt, you get your milk and you get the food off this conveyor belt that was already on the tray for you. And then we would go to our classrooms and eat. So it was not only we didn't have the cafeteria workers to speak with, that was always fun. But it seemed like the time was shorter too.
Yeah, it was 20 minutes. And when I learned that, I was quite surprised because, of course, we'd take an hour or more for a meal.
Yeah.
And even in the cafeteria, I used to go there a lot with Gina, and none of you children were with us. We just went and ate. I mean, you had been there at different times with your own classrooms, and we loved it. We really enjoyed going. So yeah, and that was a big difference. That was the only difference that I felt was a little strange. And of course, it kept happening after that most everywhere. So it was a big change.
Very big change.
But overall, I feel that everything that took place for the school to be built, it was a very solid, good school. And the children did enjoy being there. So that was pretty marvelous.
Yeah, it was. It was a good education experience.
So play by play.
Oh, yes.
So next on the agenda was, I had a friend named Carolyn, and she and I had known each other through the poetry club. And then we visited some friends at a large area of land. And her son, Peter, was about the same age as Gina, and they played really well together. Well, Carolyn introduced me to a script that she had. It was an outline of a play that she wanted to eventually write music for and produce, or be present for. And I looked it over and said, we can do this together. And she said, yeah, really? I said, yeah, sure. So we wrote 33 songs within 2 weeks. And she was definitely a writer of songs. I was just beginning. And so we wrote the script, and I wrote a play within a play. So while she went to Florida Institute of Technology, they had just built a beautiful new auditorium. It was gorgeous. And she asked them if we could use it for the play. There'd be 3 matinees and 3 evening shows. And they said yes. Then she went to a high school music teacher and asked him if he would write a very basic score.
Yes.
He said, sure, he could do that. It would be very basic. There would be no melody. She'd have to play the piano. So he did that, and she knew a lot of actors in the area. So she got them all together, and I got together the group that was going to be in the play-by-play. There were about 12 early 20s and people, and we started rehearsing, and that meant that we either needed a babysitter every night, or Benny would at least fill in sometimes. And your grandmother was present because she was with us for 6 months of each year, and the rest of the time she was with her daughter and her husband. So there was always somebody at home.
Yes.
And so I went to the practices, and it turned out that there was not a happy man with my children or our children. So the next day after the first rehearsal, they all sat me down and said, Mom, we didn't like the way Daddy treated us. And I said, well, what happened? And you all told me that he was dark and you were scared.
Yeah.
And so I said, well, you know what? It doesn't help him or you if you tell me, because it was he that did this. So you need to go talk to him. And you all said, oh, no, we can't. I said, well, you can, and I will be there as the intermediary if one is needed.
Yeah.
But you need to do the talking, because this is important. You each need to use your voice and allow your father to know how you feel. And so each of you did. And he was very uncomfortable and, kind of in his chair. He finally admitted that, yeah, okay, I understand. I won't do that again. So from there, I knew that I would be having rehearsal a lot. And Jay wanted to be in the play because there was somebody his age in the script, but that was being filled by Carolyn's son because she had promised it to him long before it ever got to this stage. And he was very disgruntled. And I said, Jay, you have school and we're going to be rehearsing on school nights. So even with that, it is impossible.
Yeah.
So he just didn't like it. He thought I was being mean. And so the rehearsals went really well. And we were booked to do an interview in Orlando so we could let people know that the play would be on, and we were giving the proceeds to muscular dystrophy. And so we went to Orlando, Carolyn and I just loved the idea of doing this. And we loved it. We told, the interviewer was very good, and we talked. And the next day, my friend said to me, I couldn't believe it. You just talked like you were just talking. I said, well, I was on TV.
Yes.
And so she was kind of surprised. And I said, no, we had something to say. We had something to make sure that we have people who come to the play, and letting people know is the best way for that possibility. And we already had the schools set up to bus children for the matinees from different schools in the whole district. So that was all ready. And when the play began, the first night, the the father and mother in the play were the only two on stage, and they were talking, and the lights went out.
Oh dear.
And the man did skip a beat. He said, "Honey, did you pay the electric bill?" And she said, "Of course I did." And he said, "Well, let me go see if the box, the switches are not right, and
yeah.
I can do something about it." So what a save, huh?
Yes.
And then the lights came back on as he came back on stage, which was pretty nice.
Yes.
And the play went really well, and people seemed to enjoy and appreciate it. JoJo had an opportunity to come with her school to one of the afternoons, and
I did enjoy it. And actually, what I think made it fun is that I knew that you were a part of it. And it just made me happy, made me feel like, because you were always that way with us, always encouraging and really wanting. And it was like, yeah, my mom's in this play and help put it together. And so, yeah, it was good.
Yeah, I had a walk-on part, but mainly I wasn't in the play. But in the play, in regard to the group of people that I had gathered, and Byron was a classical guitarist, and he took the song I had written and created
An arrangement.
arrangement for it, and he sang. So I loved that was happening. And he also played some of Bach while the young people were talking, because each had a part and they were each speaking. It's pretty cool. So it was a play within the play, and it worked really well. And the play itself was family, and so it was called Traveling Fever. And all the songs in it were really upbeat, and that was also, it seemed to be enjoyed by everyone. So we did well, and we had some good money to collect for, I think we had $200 or $300 for
nice.
muscular dystrophy.
Yes.
So we were happy with that. And it was a good experience. I really felt, well, what happened was an agent wanted it. So they had brought it to somebody, and he had it on his desk, and Carolyn was all excited about it. And I said, well, I really have no interest in being part of this, but I wish you well. I would, whatever happens with it, So she wasn't very happy about that, but I knew that my first priority was your children and your dad. And so it was not anything, I don't have that kind of ambition. I just enjoy living and being present with what is present and has purpose. And then if I'm not, inner knowing that I go further with it, I know better. I know that it won't bide well for me to not live in my soul rhythm, in that spacious unknowing. And that's just not anything that I do.
No, it isn't.
So it's not, So anyway, it was very successful play, and it was fun, and I learned a lot, and I met a lot of new people, and that was always a joy to me. And we had a big party on the last evening.
Yes.
And that was wonderful. So
every story had community in it, and there was a connecting of the dots and bringing new in. But what I love is what you said with the soul rhythm and coming from that place, and the importance of that.
Yeah.
And that's what allows any one of us, when we really know we need it, to live from spacious unknowing and know that we have the network in here.
Oh, it works so well.
It does work.
And that
really
network really turns out to be as potent in the field around us
Yeah.
with other people as it is within us. So it isn't one thing. I mean,
No.
it is one thing, but it isn't, there's no separation. There's no feeling of not being in the world for this purpose.
Yeah.
And always, whatever I was called to, I always was inner and with others. And that was how we learn best.
Yeah.
And how we use our faculties best. And so it was, all three were quite, and connecting the dots and understanding that when we are in our soul rhythm, everything works quite beautifully. And yeah,
connecting the dots is important. If we do it here, sometimes we need that, like you're saying, that someone out here to show us, and then it can
Mhm.
tweak us or cue us into, oh, let me notice and pay attention to this. And
Yeah.
then it's easier to come into
exactly. And the young man
the understanding.
was
Yes.
definitely that, connecting the dots where it made sense what had happened, even though it was hard.
Yes.
And then with the school, the people that were all fired up, they needed to be integral to the whole.
Yeah. Getting the consensus. Yeah.
And that had to happen.
Yeah.
And it did.
Yes.
And the same with the play.
Mhm.
It was all, yeah.
Creative expression, the creative expression with the play. What time is it? What time is it, JoJo Rose?
Tip,
Tip tap, tip tap, tip tap.
Tip of the week. Let go of everything you think you know and find out what happens.
Tap in to your heart of hearts. Tap your forehead. Be still. Let the letting go begin with me.
Inquiry.
What do I need to let go of today?
Response.
I will let go of any judgment on myself and ...
Oh, that's a blank for them to write into what that is.
Yeah.
Okay, well, write about what you experience in letting go, so you understand better what your life shows you when you let go of any attachment, of any judgments. You'll learn a lot about yourself, I promise.
Yes, you will.
Try it. You'll like it.
Connect the dots. We have enjoyed being here with you today, and now it is time to say goodbye. Please join us next week. Remember that we are here every Monday at 7 p.m. Pacific time. We'd love to see you again. And please visit our website, spaciousunknowing.com. Check everything out we have on there and join our community. Sign in for Spacious Unknowing meditations. We will see you next week. Aloha.
Aloha. Thank you for listening to Spacious Unknowing Network, Sunshine for Your Soul, with Julie O.
And JoJo Rose.
Join us again for life-affirming communication every Monday at 7 p.m. Pacific Time on transformationtalkradio.com, so that you can bask in the rays of infinite love.
Access soul rhythm to tap into your real being for your heartbeat in the rhythm of your soul.
Feel it guide you to new horizons and unlimited infinite love. For more information about Julie O.
and JoJo Rose,
visit spaciousunknowingnetwork.com. That's spaciousunknowingnetwork.com.